Welcome to Sonic Talk episode 686, which is streaming live today on Wednesday, the 6th of October, 2021. Remember, you can pick up this audio podcast as well on all good podcast distributions, Alexa, Google, iTunes, all of those places. But also we stream live to Twitch. We also stream live to Facebook Live, which you may be watching now. But also, if you're interested, there's also a pre-show aspect to this, which you may have interest in. And if I flash this little trailer here, you'll be able to see that you can get to that via Patreon. In fact, we put a load of stuff on Patreon. We posted an SH1 piece, and Chris, who did that, added an extra 44 minutes of content. I posted some extras for the Hydrosynth Deluxe review that came up. So you're getting a lot of value this month, and every month, I like to think. But all our stuff that goes up to YouTube monetized will be posted there ad-free, so you can kind of skip that and don't have to be annoyed by ads, which there will be in this show, but these gets edited out and uploaded to Patreon there. So, you know, it's all, you do get value for money, we feel. You get at least 4 videos a month and the other stuff that we do, because we're obviously doing the podcast. Anyway, welcome, everybody. This is Music Technology Podcast, and we're I'm delighted to actually, we've got him all to ourselves this week. We've only got one guest, so the introductions can be much shorter. Before I go there, I'm just going to say hello to all of our chatties. Nice to see you in there. I hope everything's okay with you. And in fact, our Discord, our IRC, we've now got a new IRC address, which is live.sonictalk.com, because we're going to be switching over to an upgraded system with other fancy bits. But we needed to change it from a fixed IP to just a DNS entry. But anyway, let's say hello to BT. How are you doing, BT?
I'm fantastic, Nick. It's so good to see you, man. And I have to say, I was so thrilled to see you guys in Berlin. I probably watched like 85 to 90% of the content you guys shot in Berlin. It was just so exciting to see an event like that happening. You know, we missed NAMM so much. My wife and I were just talking about, I'm sure you got the email too. They're saying like a summer NAMM.
Yeah, but, June, yeah.
June, yeah, is right. So we're like, yes, I can't wait to be there on a Segway. Just missed it so much, but we're great, man. We're great. So yeah, it's really nice to see you.
Well, it's good to be here, but yeah, you're right about Superbooth. I mean, the sense of event, and I think the one thing that we felt when we were there was that because we were able to basically post videos really fast and really up, it really kind of created more of a global vibe to what is essentially a national event, and it made us kind of realise that the stuff that we and other medias do is really important to these kind of smaller, tightly focused events. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what NAMM transpires, because I think while there'll be plenty of American visitors, I wonder how big the international visitors will be, because I don't know what it's going to be like until closer to the time. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. I mean, have you been traveling internationally, or are you keeping it sort of inside the continent?
No, we haven't. And on it, you know, I have so many friends that have started back up, and this is no sort of FUD here or anything like that. I think probably at a point, you know, it's why we need to take our vitamins and what have you. You know, even vaccinated, I think probably at a point, it's high likelihood that many of us will experience this stupid thing that we have just amongst us now. And so, yeah, I do have friends that have started traveling and thankfully every single one of them has been okay. But I have 3 friends that have started doing shows again that have gotten COVID out of probably 10 friends. And so I just, honestly, I mean, you and I have hung out. I'm weirdly introverted. Like, I love going out and doing shows. I miss it a lot. I particularly miss things like NAMM. But I've gotten to spend so much time in the studio and work on these sort of bucket list projects that it's been a blessing in many ways for us. So, yeah, no international travel. We were going to go to Amsterdam Dance Event, but of course it's canceled for people that aren't Dutch. So first big show will be EDC in Vegas in next month, I think it is.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I mean, you've got plenty of country to travel around. I mean, it's not like you're in a tiny little island. So, you know, you've got options. You have got options. But I suppose we're sort of pussyfooting around the fact that you've actually just released another album, which is a big deal in itself. You know, I mean, I know you're very prolific, but this album is obviously kind of a big deal. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press that. You did a little video on Instagram which kind of explains it probably better than I will. So if I start with that, maybe that's the best thing to do. So I just need to get my link sorted out. So okay.
I'm BT. Welcome to Metaversal. Metaversal is my 14th artist album, conceived from the ground up as a blockchain experience. It's represented as 200,000 lines of living code in audio reactive art, as physical fine art sculptures from the waveforms of the songs themselves, as beautiful bespoke white vinyl box sets, and coolest of all, Metaversal is a cryptographic treasure hunt for you to solve. My entire life I've been fascinated with the idea of musical encryption. In fact, so much so, I've been hiding things in my compositions, starting with EMA. It's been incredible to watch over the years people find these Easter eggs and to understand the actual hidden subtext and meaning to some of these songs. I wanted to take this and formalize it into a gamified experience where fans could play to earn one-of-one NFTs that could be had no other way. I can't wait for you and I to take this journey together. This is Metaversal.
Right, that's the kind of elevator pitch, and I think you did a really good job there, though. I've got to say, BT, well, I mean, it's about time you invested in a decent microphone for your for your stuff. I mean, come on. Come on.
Oh my God. Man, I'll tell you what, shooting on a DSLR, you know, my wife and I did that together. And shooting on a DSLR, it's so funny you mentioned that. We absolutely are going to get a lavalier mic for our DSLR. We need it so bad. I'm sat there with RX trying to clean up those Canon 5D videos. It's just a nightmare. We're definitely going to do that. So, yeah.
I'll tell you what to get. Try get one of the Rode Go mics. Go Mic 2 is really good. We use that. That's all we used at Super Booth, and we were expecting it because it's here and it's Omni, but it was really. I don't know what kind of special sauce they've got in there, but it's got some DSP that really tightly focuses it on the voice. It's a really good mic. Yeah, really good.
Amazing. It's Rode. Which one is it?
Go Mic 2. It's Go Mic 2, and because you get a pair of them and one receiver, so you can have two mics going in, so you can do, you know, double interviews or just use one or whatever. They're really, really good though, really good, and they record onto internal memory as well, apparently, which we only discovered. It's a nightmare to get it off, but it's just a backup just in case it gets screwed up.
Gotcha.
But but anyway,
my Sony field recorders. No, I love it, man. That's what we're here for, is to talk nerdy. My Sony field recorders. Same as, like, sometimes it will record internally, and thankfully that's pretty easy to get off there. But yeah, so point taken. I like your notes, Nick, always. It's great.
So, I mean, it's been a trip. I mean, because obviously you must have been spending all this time talking about the whole, you know, the concept and selling. Because, I mean, this is something that we noticed last time you were on. You were talking about the Genesis.json album. It's very polarizing. NFTs are really polarizing. And for some reason, people get really uppity and uptight about it. They're kind of, and I'm curious why that is, because in many ways, you know, we've spent the last 20 years devaluing our digital assets, you know, so our music has become just nothing. It's kind of, you know, free almost. And yet, you know, doing what you're doing, which is essentially kind of claiming back some ownership of that digital stuff, seems to really upset a lot of people. And I'm not because they think it should be free, but because and I wonder why that is. I wonder whether you've experienced much pushback on this whole kind of journey that you've been on.
You know, I hear those sort of things, and you hear that kind of out in culture. And I came prepared today. I have a very interesting factoid, you know, because there's one of the big pushbacks you get on the carbon footprint of decentralization, blockchain technologies. If you combine Google and Facebook products, it has a larger carbon footprint footprint than not just NFTs, but the blockchain, Bitcoin, every part of decentralization all wrapped up in a ball. So we're having this conversation on YouTube, and that has a more significant carbon impact than the blockchain, than all the blockchains combined.
Right.
So it's a very interesting point to note. So why do I think that there's this? And by the way, we can do better and we should do better. And that's what a lot of the layer 2 solutions, not to get into all of that, are in these kind of decentralized Web 3.0 technologies, is looking for solutions that are not proof of work, which uses computation, but what we call proof of stake. And so people are solutioning these things in real time. I mean, as with a project like Metaversal, people are making up things literally in real time. I mean, at its core, this whole record was me pushing back on the idea that music doesn't have value anymore. I don't believe that. I refuse to live in a world where the arts don't have value. I think they have tremendous value. They shape formatively people's perspective. They help us to heal. They help us to communicate without words, both art and music. They have tremendous, palpable, tangible value. And I refuse a world that says otherwise. And so, in many ways, this is a reaction to the sort of abusive culture of the music business. I think that the music industry, it's gotten really bad over the last 10 years, but from its kind of inception, us calling it a business, has had this culture of objectification of artists. And this is the first time in history where artists can disintermediate the middleman. So what do I mean when I'm saying that? I don't need a record. I don't need a manager. I don't need Spotify at all. This record's not on Spotify. It's not on Apple Music. This record is wrapped in a 200,000 line of code engine that lives,
plays in a web browser.
Yeah, exactly. And that will be there way after my lifetime. It's not hosted in some web domain. It's nodally redundant over millions of computers. So, and it has provable value. Someone wanted to own that and they bought it outright. So we're really in this cool, brave, new world in many ways. And so, I feel a lot of my calling currently is hipping musicians, artists, young producers. I mean, Nick, dude, I have kind of WhatsApp threads going with people. Every single person listening to this would know every single one of these people on several of the WhatsApp threads I'm on. It's like, whether it's film guys or it's, dance music folks. And all of them are saying to me privately, please teach me what this is. This is incredible what you've done. I need to understand this.
I think that's partly it, isn't it? It's sort of lack of understanding, and I'm totally guilty about it as well. I mean, just rewinding a little bit there. I mean, the creative aspect of it. I mean, because that's the thing that's I'm also find interesting, because I can watch and listen to the album here in the browser, but I can't get to it any other way, and I find that's really interesting. So how do you know whether it's? I mean, because obviously you sell the digital rights to, or the the NFTs that are associated with each track or the artwork. How do you know how well it's doing? I mean, do you get feedback? Do you get statistics coming back at you from I guess people? You get web stats about people who show up and watch it in the web browser. I mean, how do you measure how well it's gone, other than the initial sale?
Think about the question that we're asking and how we're framing it. Okay, it's like this is the exact sort of conversation I'm excited to have with you, Nick, because you're such and not blowing smoke either, man. You're a really thoughtful, look at things very deeply. As are the other co-hosts of this show and people that are on here regularly. And I think if we really, it's kind of that like almost like a religious moment, or like a very intense psychedelic moment, where you push back off the framework of how you typically look at things. Think about the question we're even asking.
Right.
How do you tell extrinsically its success? It's a remarkable question, actually, right? That we even it's our go-to. It's kind of like this is again what I mean by this kind of Truman Show sort of the Matrix sort of objectification of artists. We're immediately looking outwards. Immediately.
Well, yeah, but
right?
I mean, let's not pretend that creativity isn't linked to ego with a small e in lots of ways. You know, it's about projection. It's about being accepted. There is a certain amount of that, and one likes to measure it. I mean, previously, you know, before sales, you go do a gig, the audience scream and shout and go, "I love it," and you get that. And I suppose that the digital, the statistical side of it is the kind of equivalent. We get our endorphins, you know, meta endorphins or whatever, you know, via that way. I suppose, if that's not too kind of hippie way of putting it.
You're totally right. It's like it's almost like a mainlined version of what real feedback is talking to people and them saying, "Hey man, this piece of music really moved me. This is beautiful. I put this on at a pivotal moment in my life. This helped me this helped me meet my wife. You know, so-and-so gave birth to this song." Like, stories. Music is actually about not likes and, you know, little bubbles going off and all these kind of things. It's wild to see Facebook now. We could go into that for a long time, I suppose. But I think that just pushing back off the can, asking that question, like, what is music for, and how do you tell it's successful? Those are the big sort of questions that I want to have. So how I can tell you that I feel like this project is successful is it's been received by my peers, right, such in praise and accolades. Like, they actually get what it is, right? So. And when they haven't, they've asked. And so, like, I've had these very deep, long conversations with some good friends and peers, and they're curious. It's like, to me, that's like we crossed the finish line of success. They're like, wait, you put this out. It's in a software engine on the blockchain. You made sculptures out of audio waveforms that you can scan with your phone. And, like, it's not on Spotify. And someone bought it. I don't understand. Please explain this to me. This is freaking bananas, right? And so I think that how we can start to gauge things, the metric of success, to be, if we're going to look at things like numbers, the numbers are going to be way, way smaller,
right? Because
people are now interested in limited ownership, or, like, you know, provenance-driven ownership. So, like, it's provable ownership of digital assets, which is like, after going through, and you were there too, man, you know, after living through the Napster into iTunes era, and it's like anything can be copied infinity times, for someone to say, oh, here's a pointer, and this points at this thing, and it says this one is the real one, which is all an NFT is. It's a tokenized pointer,
yeah,
right, at something, and it says this is the real one, and somebody says, oh, that's cool, I want to own the real one. Like, that's a kind of brain-breaking thing that, you know, kids that play Fortnite, they think we're stupid that we don't get that, right? Like, I have trouble wrapping my head around it, but they're like, oh, dude, I'll pay $50 for an avatar. I'll pay $16 for a sword, whatever. Like, that's right. Totally makes sense to them, you know? So I think that, I think moving forward that it's going to take some sort of generational acceptance is a part of it, but I think the younger generations, this will be so normal to them, you know, the Gen Zers, there won't be another way, right? Like, they will be their own record label. They will be their own manager. They will form a community that's a DAO with their audience. These will be normal things in the future, totally normal.
Interesting. I think, I mean, I get that, and I appreciate the explanation of that. I think I want to try and focus on some of the creative aspects of what's been going on in this as well, and the music, you know, the stuff you actually made, you know, because, like I say, I think we need to talk about this, but I think I want to get into some of the nitty-gritty of that. But before we do, and I feel kind of crass doing that, now we've been talking about commercialism and everybody's
I love it.
Here's a message from our sponsors.
Isotope Producers Club is a one-of-a-kind membership for producers ready to take their tracks to the next level. Once you join, you'll gain access to powerhouse iZotope plugins and a curated selection of tools from our partners, such as Melodyne from Celemony. Plus, as long as you're a member, you'll get every future update to the iZotope plugins in your membership for no extra cost. We'll also regularly serve you new curated content like exclusive inspiration-sparking sample packs and preset packs, and industry-leading training ranging from our own tutorials to vocal production lessons from the world-renowned Berklee Online, taught by Grammy-winning producer and engineer Prince Charles Alexander. With new content being added every month full of valuable production techniques, tips and tricks, and solutions to common production problems, becoming a member is an investment in your career that grows as you and your career do. For more information on iZotope Producers Club, head to iZotope.com.
And of course, if you head over to iZotope.com/sonictalk, you get to the special landing page, and there's a link there to start a free trial, so you can get a month up front, which you can cancel after 30 days, and check it out. There's also the music production suite, and also, I forget the name of the other one. I really should read my notes better, but we do thank them very much for their support of the show. It's much appreciated. So one thing I was really interested in, BT, is about the way that the album came together, because it's got a really, I mean, it sounds great. There's a real depth and weight to it in terms of the, and it sounds like, I mean, I'm hoping I'm right about this. It sounds like there's a lot of analog in there, but you're probably now going to tell me, no, it's all in the box.
Oh, no.
Where,
no,
I'm
not.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, no, it's 100% analog. So this Metaversal has such a cool story. This is for YouTube before we start. And I don't know if you noticed it yet, that collation that you see when you open the Metaversal engine, if you see my logo in the bottom left, if you click on that, it will take you to the playlist, and the songs actually change during the day. There's a totally new version of the album that plays at night, and every full lunar cycle, the album plays completely differently. There's 3 totally bespoke different versions of this album, all baked into that software engine. It's part of what's really special about it. But so what you've probably heard are the daytime versions of the album. Also, too,
there we go.
And check it out. That button, the bottom left button, click that. Yeah, so this is the gallery mode, and in the gallery mode, every day of the week has a different gallery page. These are the actual NFTs themselves that these incredible artists, David Gao and Casper Cloudham, did. The whole engine, too, has all these Easter eggs in it that was this insane cryptographic treasure hunt. But we're not going to go into that. We're going to talk about the record because we're going to nerd out about music. I haven't gotten to do that about this record. So it happened in a really special way, Nick, and you know my affinity for analog synth. I mean, clearly where I'm sitting, it's like the analog synth palace, right? I've been, collecting since I could mow lawns when I was a kid and got my first, Juno 106. So I love analog synthesizers. I also love all the modern stuff as well, too. But when we were building this room, it was, a dusty mess, with cables, strewn all over the place. It took 3 years. I've never worked in a sound treated room ever I've worked in sound treated rooms many times in a studio, but I've never had one, right? I've always worked in like a closet, that's like rings to like, middle A, right? Or like, a basement, bedroom. And so, we saved up, and we said, we're going to build my dream room where I could put all my synths in it. I would have to pull out from storage to like, use the Jupiter 8 and then put it back up. And so we finally said, we're going to build a room. So it took us 3 years, believe it or not, to build this room. We went through 2 contractors. It was a nightmare. Anybody that's done that, my God, it's like, and not like poor me. I'm so blessed. It's like my dream working. But it was a really hard project. So while that was happening, you can't see it, but adjacent to this room is my shop, right? And my shop is, I literally can touch both walls. You can see it in that video. So you can touch both walls in my shop with your hands that's how small it is. It's a very long, it's got the HVAC at the end of it. It's got a workbench in there, and it's where when, the Prophet 5, in fact, I got to pull the Prophet 5 to do this. I've got that filter upgrade for it. But, when I need to mod something or a cap blows or whatever, I pull it in there. I've got an oscilloscope and a solder and a desoldering iron, and I just, put on some Depeche work on it. It's like the most fun thing ever. And so while this room was being built, I didn't have a space to work. And I'm like in the house, on top of my whole family, there's animals everywhere. It's chaos there, and I'm working laptop. My wife said to me, she was like, why don't you put your electric piano out in the shop? It might fit. And so I took my CP70, which is probably my favorite electromechanical instrument.
I thought I heard some on there as well. There's definitely some on the album, isn't there?
Oh, Nick, it's literally on the entire record. It's throughout. That is a really specific character on this record. I took the CP70. I had an old Boss CE2 chorus pedal, right? Eventide Black Hole, yeah, and a really old, like 82 banged up live console that we used for touring at some points. I mean, pots falling off it. I mean, it's not tidy, we'll say that. I put it on top of the electric piano, and then suddenly my broken synths that were leaned up against the walls, I was like, what if I just put it on a little A-frame? And then suddenly it's like, oh, my MPC 60 is all wrapped up right now because it was going to go in this room. Maybe I'll put that in there. And then when it all really started to become like my shop is like this second room was when I pulled my first computer. It's a computer that I used to do. I did EMA. My full first was done on this computer. I did some of my early remixes like Seal and Madonna on this computer. It's a IBM, for anyone that wants to look it up, I'm going to give you its full name. It's an IBM PS2 model P70 lunchbox. It's a 386 and has no internet, right? It's an orange monochrome screen, no mouse, okay? I can work this computer with my eyes closed. I forgot how good I was with it. And the program I use on that computer is Sequencer Plus Gold that was made by Voyetra.
You're saying you did this album on that then, right? Or
I did the entire album is improvised using the CP70, that Voyetra setup, an MPC, and a handful of half-working synths. That's the whole album.
Wow, that's really... So what did you record to then? Because, I mean, obviously there is evolutions. And it may be explained, because this is the other question I was going to ask. There's a lot of ostinato sequences going through it. Were they starting points, or did they get... Were they... that's what some of the things could do, so that's what was running... they were through necessity, maybe, rather than through planning.
You're Nick, you were so spot on, and very astute observation. Those ostinatos, many of them functioned like a metronome. I didn't even have headphones in there. So I'm totally serious. So first of all, what did I record to start with? And the last two songs on the album that are they remind me sort of like like a Peter Gabriel kind of B-side, right? Where it's CP70 and some of these ostinatos. Yeah. Those last two songs are recorded to a Zoom field recorder. It's all I had to record to. So the rest, okay, the other 9, I recorded to a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine. I'd love to give him a shout out. His name's Jeff Coper. It's where his place is where we recorded the All Hail the Silence record. He lent me, which I eventually bought from him, an Alesis, old Alesis rack mount 24 track.
The HDR. I remember them. Yeah.
Yes. And this thing is like, it's incredible because you literally just flick your finger across it, put it in record, and off you go. And you just do what you're going to do. So I love that you asked about the ostinatos. I've got an MC202 on one side of the room. And like I said, you can literally touch both the walls. I got a 202 up here on an A-frame. I invite everyone too to like watch a couple Instagram clips back, because my wife actually captured me in 45 minutes writing a full song called Where the Sun Meets the Sea. That entire song, this has never happened in my entire catalog of music. We actually captured the writing, recording, and mixing process. The entire thing was done. But yeah, it's like the MC202, to answer your question on the Austin Autos, MC202 and a Juno 6. Those two things feature really prevalently, and I'm like reaching across the room playing the filters, so much so I actually put a CV pedal under the electric piano. Yes, that's it. That's it. And you can see that's the setup right there. Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's how the whole thing happened. I'll tell you, we talk a lot on this show, and I know that you guys focus a lot on, some of the cool new Eurorack stuff and set-top boxes, like little jam boxes. You guys sold me one when you were at Super Booth. I bought one of those black boxes, which, by the way, wow, that thing is cool. But we talk a lot about this idea of DAW-lessness, right? Like, DAW-less. I hear that. I see that as a tag on Instagram.
Yeah.
Man, there was something so liberating about being there without the internet, without, email notifications. I wouldn't even bring my phone out there. I would just take a coffee out, put it on the piano bench, and sit down, put the things in record, and make a piece of music, and not think about like what style it was going to be, where it was going to go, if it was going to go on some record. I just wrote music like literally from my heart, just sat there kind of like, you would write in a journal, and that's how this entire process happened, the whole thing.
Interesting. There's a lot. I did notice also there's a lot of 80s components in it, particularly in the drum fills and the percussion. And I was thinking, I have this image of you standing behind with maybe a smoke machine or two behind a set of kind of hexagon pads doing some of those fills, because some of them are like really vibey and just sort of, they sound very human rather than programmed. So please tell me I'm right.
You are kind of right. So I do, in fact, have a single Simmons of white, mind you, which is really cool. That like kind of lacquery white Simmons drum pads. And I actually, during the time of making this, found locally something that I literally have wanted my entire life. And we drove like 2.5 hours to go and get it. Somebody had an SDSV, and it was like they used it. It's insane.
The proper analog one, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's sound. You can, once you know that, you can hear it. And a lot of those I did. There is some live stuff on there, so it's like there's a bit of a kind of one-man band sort of thing. Like I said, I ended up having to put conch pedals under the electric piano for the filters of several. I literally modded the 202 about halfway through this process, so it had a CV filter input, so I could control the Juno 6 and the the MC202 filters while playing the piano, because it's not like a bunch of I mean, there is little, I mixed it properly after the fact, so there's a little trickery here and there, but for the most part this entire record was just a big jam, improvisation.
Interesting. So were you? I know, because I know some of the kick drums as well sound very period, and they're not like you're going back to some of your earlier work. They're not like full on 909 stuff. There's quite a lot of slap to the front of them as well. Were you using some old classic bass kick drums in there as well?
For sure, yeah. One of the things that I was really excited about with my MPC, another dear friend of mine, his name is Garth. Any sampler nerds out there will know all about Chicken Systems Translator.
Yes.
Garth is the gentleman that programmed that and a slew of other amazing sample software. That's hard to say. Software for kind of surgical editing of samples and porting between multiple machines. That's what Chicken Systems Translator really shines at. So Garth actually, he's been a friend of mine for years and years. He's a lovely, lovely, lovely man. And I just put a CF card reader on that MPC 60, which is, let me tell you, that's a bit of an install, more than you would think. Yeah. And that, Garth, I really want a way that not just I can sample into it, but I can take some of my like kind of legacy drum machine sounds that I've recorded right out of the machines and might have, done a bit of outboard compression or EQ to, and put them in the MPC. Cause my gosh, I mean that people talk about it. They talk about it with the S900 too, but the MPC 60, that is a special sounding instrument. I don't know what was going on in that time of like Akai sampling, but you talked about the attack transients. There's something, that machine, it's no wonder like the hip hop guys still love the MPC 60 so much, and its immediacy too. It has a vibe. So yeah, Garth made it possible that I could port a bunch of sounds to a CF card, and I loaded it up. But I actually like a lot of things too they're layered, where I would sample a white noise blast but with a bit of resonance and a filter sweep enveloping out of the Juno 60. Or the AX80. I did that out there too. I have an AX80 in the shop, and was sampling a lot of percussion, making my own percussion like we used to do. It's just like having fun.
I'm so glad you said that, because I mean the thing is your kind of reputation was built almost on this kind of forensic attention to detail when it came to programming, and the way that you used DAWs while everybody else was still kind of sequencing with MIDI and whatnot. You were kind of doing all of that stuff in terms of editing samples and putting that on a grid, and this is sort of going back to almost that kind of vibe, but obviously using a limited equipment palette.
You're exactly right, man. I mean, this is like, part of my friend Patty and I were talking, and she was like, part of what's so special about this is it's you kind of like letting people in a little bit more. She's like, it feels really humble and intimate. And I love that description. I thought that was such a nice thing to say, and like a nice way to say it. It feels like that to me too, because you're right. I think that there have been times in my career where I've hidden an important message behind a lot of polish, if that makes sense.
All right. Yeah.
And or what was an important message to me, and hopefully to others too. Or I can think of some songs actually, where, and this is just like, it doesn't have that kind of pretense. It's very immediate. It's like, you either like, if you like music, in that you're right, it definitely has kind of an 80s bent, but without being directly, it's certainly not synthwave at all.
It's not a pastiche, no.
Yeah. But if you like that, you'll love this. Like if you like synth music, I think people will really love this record. So it's just it has a spirit of exploration. It's not trying to be some like, oh, this is deep house, oh, this is whatever style of music. It's like just what it is. It's you know what I mean? It doesn't have a style. It's like just me exploring and having fun,
Excellent. Well, at this point, it's time for another crass commercial intervention, but I will come back because I've got some more questions about how it sort of maybe melded together and more. So let's just have a word from our friends over at Modal. Of course, it's the Cobalt 8, innovative oscillator, 8-voice extended virtual analog synth, innovative oscillator with, I think it's close to 40 algorithms now, maybe more, morphable 4-pole ladder filter, 29 endless encoders for real-time control, internal sequencer and arpeggiator, and MPE support for expression, and the Modal app for Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, and VST3 AU. Check it out at bit.ly/get_modal. Thanks again for their support. So another question I had was, when you've made this, and then somehow the concept of the other stuff, the bit that we began talking about, the kind of the digital aspect, that presumably was furthest from your mind when you were making this. So how did you sort of mush them together, or was there a master plan?
No, it's such an awesome question, Nick. So basically, really, there were a couple different phases to this, but this record had such a unique feeling that I started to think about a lot, and also too, and Lacey and I were talking about a lot. Like, this music sounds like if a time period kept going, right? So for those of us that were there, I was a teenager, right? it's like we had it was everything was awesome. It was like synthesizers were actually cool, and then the real cool kids showed up in flannel shirts with guitars called Nirvana, and like everybody was like, oh, I hate synthesizers. And it was like it changed everything in popular culture, at least, really changed direction, and people became de-incentivized in many ways to make synth music, and the resurgence of that happened differently. It was a different type of music, is what we now call electronic music or dance music, right? And of course, you know, I mean, I've been immersed in and I love that culture, you know, since its inception, right? Which was kind of a reaction to that 90s guitar thing. But I thought it was really interesting what she was saying is like, this record felt like if the 80s kept going, right? Like if you made
that, I understand what you're saying. Is that good? Does that sort of make you feel like you're kind of maybe you know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's like, oh yeah, well done for flying the flag. You haven't changed a bit, and nothing of any note has happened creatively since then. So stay to it. Another thing that I noticed also, I mean, by making it, you know, the way that it's available to be played, at least via, you know, my initial explorations, is there's no way. I only just found the track ordering. There's no way to kind of rewind, fast forward, and skip. You know, when you're listening to it, you kind of have to listen to the whole thing, which is sort of an unexpected byproduct as an artist. That's great because, I mean, as we know, you know, that Spotify supply lists and, you know, tons and tons of data about how far people got into your song before they skipped to the chorus or whatever it is, which is really depressing as a creative person, I'd imagine, to see that. You know, this, you sort of have a certain amount of control over it, and in a way, you know, was that part of the thinking behind it, or is it just an unexpected benefit?
No, it really was, Nick. And, you know, just looping back to like one of your earlier questions about like, what does it mean? What does success mean? I can tell you exactly what it means for a project like this. You can say thank you on Twitter, literally, or you can comment on something on Instagram, or you can, you know, you can send me a DM and you can say like, hey man, I really enjoyed this. That it's like, and I'm having these conversations I never have when I release a body of music that's so thrilling. Like people are like, oh dude, I'm putting this on. I've listened to this. And we saw this one girl posted a picture of, now mind you, this thing lives on the blockchain. Again, this is not on Spotify. We will do that eventually. We just kind of wanted to prove a point, right? To say you can do this without it. So it's on the blockchain. It's all the things, right? And there's this girl posted a picture of it running on her Tesla monitor. This freaking software engine running. And I was like, talk about the 80s ending in a cool place where we actually
that's like Knight Rider, surely. Yeah.
Knight Rider, exactly, dude. So I will plant that flag proudly. And it really does speak to the why and how the idea for the software engine and the song sculptures came about. And it really was from some of these conversations with my wife, Lacey, about like this idea of music that kept going from the time period that you loved. And I said, wow, I can really, when we started having these conversations, I was like, I can really visualize that. Like, imagine this kind of post-apocalyptic world, but it has objects and things that are from like old world. And we started to have these conversations that were very visual. And immediately I started thinking about things like graphic novels, right? And I was like, oh my God, how cool would it be if you like, instead of doing, you know, some kind of, you know, beautiful graphical piece, or you do something that's like more a portrait of yourself, right? What if we did something crazy like this, like has the look and feel of a graphic novel? And so the first person that I found to participate in this project is named Eric Halinquist. He's an incredible artist. He's a graphic novelist.
Did he do you? Did he do the virtual version? So I was curious about this actually. So when he's making your physique, shall we say, can you kind of go? Can you just make this a bit more presentable, shall we say? Did you have an input into how good or bad various parts of your body might look in that imagery, so you can improve on yourself?
I wish I did, but I'm super happy with how he did it. Of course, there's artistic license, and but you know what's so cool is like, for the clay, as it were, like for, you know, us in music world would be like our chords, our bass, our drums, right? He LiDAR scanned my face. So they used this crazy camera called Matterport. It's a wild camera. And they scanned my face at the, you know, get a very detailed scan. And then he looked at other pictures of me from music videos and stuff. And then he made this crazy post-apocalyptic landscape, and immediately these things started clicking for me, like, what if this whole album was in a software engine and we didn't put it out? Yeah, so cool. I have a cool story about that armor suit. I'll tell you in 1 second. But you know, I had the thought, like, what if the entire thing was in a software engine as opposed to you know, as opposed to on a physical object or something that you stream you know, from a DSP. And so, you know, it started this long path of how can this be built, and got there in the end. But I'll tell you what, it was freaking like this was this project was a heavy lift for sure.
I can imagine. Although, you know, you did a bunch of the preliminary stuff. I mean, some of the tech stuff presumably was dealt with when you worked on Genesis.json. Another question I have. I mean, obviously you're signed, you have publishing. How do those entities feel about you doing it this way? Because essentially you're just kind of going, nope, that's not for you. This is something else. Do you now have to make more music to fulfill those obligations as well, or is this just, you know, this is a sort of a point at which you're going, right, well, from now on, this is how it's going to be?
It's such a great question. And not only do I have entities that I work with, I have entities that I've worked with for long periods of time. Like my partners at Black Hole, Arnie Bink is literally one of our closest family friends. And I can say to you, one of the most exciting things about doing things in this whole decentralized space is all the people around me want to know more about it. So they're highly encouraging of it. You know, for example, you know, Arnie and I are going to, a lot of like fans have been like, this is crazy. I don't understand it. Where do I go listen to the record? And so I'm like, just go to btmusic.com/metaversal. It's free. You don't have to do anything. Just go there. It's a free record for you. Right. And so once they understand that, they love it, right? But still, some people are like, hey, I would love a CD of this, or is it possible to have it on Spotify? So we'll do that with Arnie and with Black Hole, who we just absolutely, like I said,
right. So you have those relationships. Friend. So I guess that comes back to the question, you know, or brings it back to the kind of idea of NFT and digital ownership. Those NFTs are the digital entity, which is the artwork plus the original audio, but then how do the people that bought that and own that, how does it reflect when you put it on Spotify and there are royalties generated, or is it a separate revenue stream that doesn't, you know, they don't get a piece of?
That's such an awesome question. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a friend's project, about Blau's project, because he's doing something that everybody needs to know about. But to answer your question really simply, it's a totally different thing, right? So the NFTs themselves, interestingly, we paired the NFTs. It's a 30-second loop of the song. It's a perfect loop, which trust was so hard to make out of some of these songs. I was doing risers and reverses and stuff so they play contiguously. So it's designed for that piece of artwork. And ours actually came bundled with a physical sculpture, which makes them really unique and cool. And they're going all over the world too. There's 11 of them. There's only 11 sculptures. They're going to different homes all over the world, from China to England to California. Different people got them all over the world. I'm going to miss them. I'm still walking past them because we haven't boxed them up yet, but we've had them in our house now for like 3 months. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually going to miss these. So it's a totally different thing, right? It's unrelated to the song, the mechanical, the publishing, all these kind of things. Also too, I quickly want to just tell everybody about Blau's project Royal, which is a totally new thing. So those of you that, I'm sure there's a lot of electronic music fans here and a lot of people know who Blau is, but you should check out his project Royal, which, imagine this, it's taking a song and fractionalizing the ownership of the song to your fans. So he's doing where, like, I think it's like half of the, but it's defined by the artist, half or of the publishing of your song, you fans, and they earn a part of the royalty stream.
Okay. Because that's what I thought was kind of happening in a way. It's almost like, yeah, I was thinking that kind of makes sense, because essentially, you know, then you would have, it's almost like you're selling the digital rights, you know, or one could, depending on how, I mean, we spoke about this in the previous thing about JSON. If you want to check that, the genesis.json, check some of that. But the idea of the contracts baked in, so you could kind of go, well, here's my, 10, 12 tracks. A publishing company could go, well, I want to buy those, or, you know, a record company could do, or an individual. It democratizes that process and takes it out of the hands of just the record industry, and they're effectively bidding on the rights to that material, you know, in perpetuity, or however you set it up. And that kind of makes sense, because it's almost like post crowdfunding, you know, if people, but I mean, that works because you're you know, and you're not just some bloke who's made a 4-track in his garage and hasn't got the reputation yet. So there's a disparity in the way that it's available to everybody from that point of view, I guess.
Nick, and you know how much I love you. I'm going to push on that a little bit, man. I'll tell you what, there are artists and musicians in NFT community. I'm going to give somebody a shout out. His name is Pat Dimitri. Okay. He is a session guitarist. I so hope he sees this. He's a session guitarist. He's played with some good bands. He's the last 10 years. He's a ripping guitarist. He's gotten into the entire NFT culture. He's not some big name. He's a session guy. And let me tell you something. He told me privately, okay, and I think he shared things like this on Twitter Spaces and on Clubhouse. He said he's made more money in the last month than he's made in the last 10 years of touring from NFTs. This does not prioritize people that have catalogs or big followings. People are interested in cool stuff here. They're interested in art. They're interested in cool music. It's wide open. I'm serious too. I'm talking about people that have like 200 Twitter followers, you know, 6 months later have quit their day job and are doing this full time. It's wide open. I'm telling you, it's very, very, very exciting, this space for musicians.
Right. Okay. Well, no, but brilliant. I mean, that sounds great in terms of, I mean, there is, I suppose the thing is, you know, we're brought up to think that if something sounds too good to be true, it often is. So, you know, there's obviously caveat emptor into this, and you know, you still got to come up with something that people want. It's not just like, hey, I'm just going to put my, you know, toenail clippings up and expect to make a fortune. You know, you need to have something of quality. So yeah, that makes sense. For sure. Okay. Interesting.
You're absolutely right about that. And I think one of the fundamentally overlooking things. I was to tell you something interesting, because we've seen a lot of very high profile artists try to come into the blockchain space and do some big, hyped NFT drop, and they have failed. And there's actually a reason for that. And the reason is it's a very small group of people, and all the people are actually trying. If someone comes in and it looks like they're there to do some kind of like cash grab, you know, especially we saw this actually 8 months ago with a lot of the electronic music guys. They came in, they did an NFT drop, some big high profile thing, they got some love for it, and they bounced. They were gone, right? People do not like that at all in the space. I don't like it. Very protective over these people. These are innovators, thought leaders that are doing this work and uplifting this whole community. And so my interesting point to note for people in this is, if you want to participate, you actually have to show up and participate. You need to get to know people. You need to see what's happening. You need to lift other people's projects up. And there's so much cool stuff to up and learn. It's like, I love it so much, Nick. I love it like I love synthesizers. It's crazy, man.
Interesting.
I mean, in 10 years, we won't be having, it won't even be a conversation, because it will be how people release things.
Right. And that makes sense. I mean, I think, the technology, as we see with technology, I mean, it was interesting you talked about the Tesla with your album running on it. There was a story, a friend of ours, guy who used to run the guitar channel on our site, he's posted a video where there's a Trax DAW that runs on a Tesla, and they basically put a bunch of people in the car and made a track, in the track.
That's so cool.
But bizarrely, it crashed and they lost their work, which was kind of a bit scary when you think these people are also devising like autonomous vehicles which run on software. That's a little bit of a scary concept.
Right.
But
Right, exactly. It's wild, the time that we're living through, man. I mean, we've talked a little bit on the show about machine learning and what that's too for the arts. It's like we're living through this wild time period. And I think for us as musicians, just looping back to because it's a thing you hear a lot, is in decentralization stuff called FUD, which stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? You hear a lot of FUD around the sort of carbon footprint and the environmental impacts and stuff. And like I said, in everything, right? In YouTube, we want to do better, not just in blockchain, but it's important for people to know it's such a small thing. But the reason why, you asked me this before and I didn't answer it, the reason why that comes up a lot, I actually believe this in my heart of hearts, not as some conspiracy. I think it's a way to oppress artists. It's another way. This is a myth that is being propagated by the banking system and by people like record labels, and saying, no, don't look over there. There's nothing to see there, and it's going to wreck the planet, and it's this horrible thing for the environment. Come over here with us, where we're going to charge you 87%. You're going to make a 13% royalty, and you're going to sign your next 12 albums to us. And when you put $1 in the bank, we're going to lend it out to 1,000 people. And if you need it out, I'm not sure if you can. Those people propagating that myth, because as artists, we're sensitive. We're wired for things like that. We feel protective over animals and the environment and, things that are defenseless. I certainly do. I know my fellow artists do.
I suppose so. I should put a caveat. I mean that, I try and keep away from conspiracy theory and whatnot, but I totally get your point. Interestingly, I mean, the other thing I think the thing that people are frightened about technology, because we're seeing it happen, if an algorithm changes, as a YouTube creator myself, if I still keep, I'm putting out the same stuff, I'm not reaching my audience anymore because an algorithm got tweaked at the central point where the data is amalgamated. So things can have a massive effect on my work, my distribution, the audience I reach, with just somebody adjusting, some parameters within an algorithm. And I suppose there's a certain amount of the sense that, that's having a central point at which things are all latched onto. You kind of get the sense that, we're open to those kind of abuses or those kind of difficulties, I guess, in the future.
Oh God, Nick, this is literally, I feel like we're having a blockchain therapy session. This is amazing. Okay. Because I swear to God, you're bringing up things that the audience needs to hear. Please give me 30 seconds. Okay. What you just said about an algorithm being changed. Okay. Look what just happened with Instagram. I actually know some inside stuff I shouldn't say out loud and how I know it. They have deprioritized videos on Instagram by a quarter. Okay. Right. What do they want you doing? You work for Instagram. Okay. Anybody here whose business is reliant on promoting things through Instagram, you are an employee of Instagram. And guess what? They just changed your role. Your new role is to make reels. And if you don't like making reels, okay, prioritizing your content, you're welcome. They changed. Guess what Instagram is? A centralized system.
Yeah, well, that's true.
What we are talking about are distributed, decentralized systems where there isn't a boss like Instagram. That's why Discord is incredible. You keep being more censored, right? It is totally decentralized. Telegram is the same thing. Bitcoin is the same thing. So are these protocols. They are decentralized. There's not a person that gets to flip those levers. You can be your own protocol. If you want, you can be your own method and mechanic of distribution. Okay,
Right,
sermon
okay.
ended. Like
Okay, all right,
you're asking all the right questions, Nick. These are all the right concerns we should have. That doesn't exist in this space. There isn't a person behind the curtain that can flip the levers.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That sounds like
You're welcome.
I feel educated. I feel educated. So what? I mean, what's next? I mean, guess something like this, has taken up so much of your headspace for so long. I mean, you said you're going to go off and take a break. What about creatively? What's coming up next? I mean, are you going to be able to get out there and play, or are you working on more album stuff? I mean, what's next for you?
There's a bunch of stuff coming up. So one of the things that I've been working on for the last 3 years, I'm still not able to talk about yet, but just by the length of time I've been working on it and the fact that it's orchestral, a lot of people will surmise what it is. That's going to be announced over these sort of projects. I have to be very oblique about this. These sort of projects take a lot longer than scoring a film. It is a scoring project. I'm working with such an awesome team on that. So that's going to see the light of day next year, but I've got a ton more blockchain things coming up. One that's actually going to go in a fine art, like a gallery sort of auction house place. That's a collaboration with a physical artist without saying too much. So, working on dance music tracks with friends, bunch of new software coming next year. I'll be back here. Oh, Nick, dude, man, you don't understand some of the stuff software wise that's coming next year. I'll tell you what, too. Some of it ties into this, where I see a real opportunity here, right? We're talking about art and music, right?
Yeah.
What about software, right? Like, what about music technology? Like, wouldn't this be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if you had were rare that were for making music? Interesting.
It's like vintage software.
There's big questions to ask here. So yeah, a lot of music software stuff, tons of music production stuff. And I miss everybody a ton. I am freaked out to go out and do shows. I'm going to be honest to you, fully vaxxed, but freaked out. So I've got 2 booked. My agent Mike said the phone is blowing off the hook, and so I think I'll probably do some more. But I need to get my feet wet with 1 or 2 of them. I want everybody to be safe to events. So I'm watching that carefully. But that's what's happening.
So, just one final question, because I mean, whenever we speak to you, you're very on. You're switched on. You're kind of really raring to go. What does it take you long to get revved up, or do you must sleep presumably? Do you kind of chill out, and do you wake up like this, or do you kind of are you just infused generally? I'm just curious.
I do. It's my personality, man. I mean, part of it is a good part of it is like, we're really like, and not in some kind of like overly way, but we're like really clean living and like really conscious about what we put in our bodies, conscious about resting. We do sleep a good amount, and being hydrated, working out, all these kind of things. So I have more energy because of it,
Right.
So that's a part of it. But my wife teases me. She's like, sometimes in the middle of the night, you'll talk in your sleep, like about math. And she jokes like in the morning, I'm just like ready to do equations, so part of it's my personality too, for sure. There's no question. I was made that way. So
excellent. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, without that, you wouldn't be what you are and wouldn't be as creative as you are, and wouldn't be coming up with all of this stuff. So thank you, DT. It's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for enlightening us and also telling us a little bit about the creative process and the music and all of those things. Those are also important. I think it's sometimes forgotten in the hype of new technology, right?
Yeah, man, it's my absolute pleasure, Nick. I think the world of what you guys do here. I think it's such an awesome act of service to the music community, keeping everybody hip on all the new stuff that's coming out. It's overwhelming. It's hard to keep track of. And like, I literally, again, this is not blowing smoke. Like, I literally look to you guys to hear. It's like, I look at one thing and I talk to one person. I talk to Vine, I look at you guys to know what is cool and is happening. So it's always fun to come on here and talk with you guys. And yeah, it's great, man. I really, really enjoy this. I appreciate the thoughtful music questions, because so many interviews around Metaversal, and literally no one has asked me music questions. I'm like, hey, the music's cool too. I swear, if you listen to it, you'll like it.
Yeah, whatever.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna put that up there again. That'll go in the chat at the right time. So there we go. And also, thank you very much to Di Stanton for a little bit of extra. Have a pint, yes. Have a pint while they're still under a fiver. A bit of super chat. Thank you very much. So, BT, it's been a pleasure. I'll speak to you soon. I'm sure you'll have other stuff that we'll want to talk to you about very soon. The creative force.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
But that's it for this time. We'll see you all next time. I press the stop button, and if you have supported us on Patreon, you will see your name fly past. See you later. Cheers. Bye-bye now.
Cheers, guys. Bye.